Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining me tonight and listening in on teen health, getting to know a little bit more about our teens. Hopefully you find this information not just useful to our teenagers, but also to our young women, our young adults. So a little bit about me, I'm Dr. Renee Chen. I'm a board-certified OBGYN with Orange Coast Women's Medical Group. And just some fun backgrounds. I'm a new mommy of an 8-month-old daughter. A lot of work, but totally worth it. Some hobbies prior to her arrival was baking, cooking, and obviously eating my creations, gardening, and keeping my koi pond tidy with my husband. So the picture there is actually a Maui Gold pineapple that we bought from Maui 2 years ago before COVID. We brought it back, we ate it, was delicious, and we decided to plant the top of the pineapple, and right now it basically fruited, so I'm hoping that we get to eat it and that it will be yummy. So teenagers, there are so many changes during this time. Some that are very obvious physical changes and some that are subtle, not so obvious, and these are emotional, psychological, social changes. One of the most important things that I do want to remind all of you is that everybody goes through these changes at their own pace and time. So it's going to be very hard to see your peers going through some of these changes and that you're not feeling the same way. So this is hopefully to normalize these changes for you all, and that we don't feel left out and have stress over these issues. So the magic word, puberty. Don't think I ever use that word in our clinical practice, but this is just the beginning. This is a word that basically encompasses these changes that happens to our body, whether it's obvious, physical, or not so physical. So this is a process that generally happens for girls between the ages of 10 to 14. That is 4 years of difference. So someone may go through puberty at 10, but some others may go through it at 14. And so this is a time period where, people are going to be looking different between their peers, and that may generate a lot of stress and anxiety, but hopefully we can talk through some of these changes so that they're not unfamiliar to you if you are the first person to go through this in your class. So I think one of the most obvious is growth spurt. So during this time, you are going to grow tall. You are going to grow out of the clothes that you've been wearing for the last couple of years, and that is totally normal. You are going to have more hair. These are hair that's different than the hair that is on your hair or on your head. It's usually in the underarm area, also in the pubic region down below, and this hair is generally darker, it's coarser, not very easily manageable like the hair that's on your head. But that is part of the normal changes for puberty. So some women or some young women will go through these changes and will want to know how to remove their hair. Some habits that they will involve in would be like shaving their pubic hair, waxing, sugaring. Some of these are not so great for our health down below. It can lead to kind of like ingrown hairs, infections. So as an OBGYN, yeah, we want to look neat and tidy down below, but perhaps trimming would be a great option during this time rather than these hair removal, just to kind of meet the norm that society gives us. Some other changes is our skin changes. There are a lot of hormone changes during puberty, and one of these will causes our skin to be oilier. That tends to harbor bacteria in our skin, and a lot of teenagers will come in with acne that they've never had before, and this does cause significant distress because you used to have this beautiful, perfect skin, and then suddenly you get a pimple here, you get a red dot there, and that does cause a lot of stress for our young adults. And then comes our period changes. So this is the time where, we get a monthly flow, and during our initial teenager years, it might not be monthly. It's very normal to have irregular periods during this time. So a lot of these changes, some not so fun, but all very normal for our bodies to go through. Once again, very important to know that these changes happen at different times for different people. Some people are quote-unquote late bloomers, and that is absolutely okay. But this tends to lead to body image problems for our teenagers, right? Social media does not help. So we have Twitter, we have Instagram, Facebook. I don't even know what's out there anymore because that's the extent of my generation with social media. But seeing what is out there, seeing and comparing ourselves, what we look like to what other people look like, there's so much out there that causes a lot of stress and anxiety when we don't look like what is out there. And that is something that I invite that our parents, our guardians, our instructors, our teachers to kind of talk to our teenagers about this. This should not be a time where our teens go through this alone. I think education and knowledge is power, and talk to them. Don't let them isolate themselves from you parents during this time, because you want to be their confidant. You want them to come to you to talk to you about these problems, okay? So, and if you're not comfortable talking about them, one of the big reasons why someone would bring their child to see me is so that I can talk to them about these problems or these issues that they may be able to go through. So, periods during this time, it could range from a lot of different presentation. So the first period may come as a surprise. With puberty, one of the very first changes for girls is going to be breast development. That is usually one of the first changes they're going to see with their body. But eventually, they are going to get their first flow. In their initial teenage years, periods are not always going to be monthly. It can range from every few months, sporadic, it could be short, it could be long, and that is probably one of the reasons why parents do bring their teenagers, or why teens would want to come to see me, is to talk about their periods. But just to kind of normalize it for you, a normal period ranges anywhere from 25 to 35 days. It is normal to get cramps. Some cramps is normal, severe cramps not so much, and that's why you would come see me. But around the period time, during your period, you can get some breast tenderness. Mood swings are definitely a very common thing to experience. Acne can tend to flare during this time. Some people do get some headaches right around their periods, food cravings prior to your periods, and bloating. All of these kind of center around getting your period, and then it does get better after you get your flow. And then the next month, the next time you have your period, you get these same symptoms again. Some of these symptoms, like headaches and period cramps, they could be very manageable with over-the-counter medications like ibuprofen, Aleve, Tylenol sometimes. But sometimes if it's not ideal in its pain management, you would come see me and we can talk about some treatment options. So some causes of abnormal periods, aside from the fact that when you first get your period during your teenage years, it can be abnormal for the first 1 or 2 years where you don't get it every month. It can come randomly and it can catch you by surprise. But other causes of irregular periods would be stress. So anything that causes stress to our body, whether it's physical, like extreme exercising or changes to your exercise habit, or if you're cramming or studying for a really big exam or a project that's due, all of those stress can potentially make you skip a cycle or make your periods a little bit weird. And that would be normal, right? If it happens just 1 or 2 times, sure, that's fine. Let's just watch it. But if it's something that occurs more frequently, that would be a reason why you would come to see your doctor. Poor sleeping habits, any changes to your sleep, if you're to get sick, those are all also stresses to our body that can change your periods. This is a pretty common concern for our young adults as well as just women in general. So this idea of body odor. We are more familiar with it in our underarms, but surprisingly, you can get it down below as well. A lot of young adults will come to me thinking they have a vaginal infection because there is an odor down below. The idea of body odor, where does it come from? So we have these glands, these little pores that are in our skin, and in certain areas like our underarm and our regions down below, it's dark, it's damp, it's wet. There's so much bacteria on our skin, and no amount of cleaning, washing can get rid of this. It's just part of your normal skin. With that, bacteria breaks down your sweat, and with time, that is going to cause odor. So while we have deodorant for your underarms, we don't really have it so much down below. I, don't normally recommend people use like, Summer's Eve or any like refreshing wash because that can cause irritation down below. But understanding that some type of odor is normal definitely helps you get through this time. If you're ever unsure whether or not something is normal or not, do come see your doctor. We're more than happy to take a look, reassure, whatnot. But some things to help get rid of odor is our soaps. So contrary to belief is that a very nicely fragrant soap is not going to make you smell better. Yeah, it's going to make you smell better for the first like 5, 10, 20 minutes, but when you start sweating, when you get through your day, that bacteria is going to break down that fragrance and it is going to mix and become a little bit not so pleasant. So some soaps that you want to use, definitely look out for keywords like hypoallergenic, fragrance-free, pH balance. Probably it's not going to be easy to find a pH balanced soap, but you can probably, if you're really, really curious, you can buy pH paper on Amazon.com and you can just dip it in your soap and see what color it changes. If it turns bright blue, it is a very basic soap, and you kind of want more of an acidic soap to keep the skin environment nice and healthy. Loose fitting clothes will also help because that allows air to kind of circulate. This is probably not a very popular item for our teenagers because you guys probably want to wear tighter fitting clothes and form fitting clothes, but loose fitting clothes, cotton underwear, those are friendly to odor production. And then, like we discussed before, try to avoid douching or feminine washes because those can harbor some chemicals, fragrance that can make the odors more obvious later on. So physical changes, there's a lot that goes through for our teens, but some that are not so obvious includes emotional, psychological, mental changes that happen. So I'm going to talk about this little graph or this little image on the right here. It definitely looks very confusing and looks very complicated. I'm going to share with you and hopefully break it down what I probably spent $5,000 at UCLA during my undergraduate studies to learn, but hopefully it's not as confusing as it looks. So, you know, a lot of these changes that we experience as a reproductive age woman, not just a teenager, boils down to hormones. Yeah, hormones are the culprit for a lot of it, but it's not always abnormal. So in the middle of the diagram, you see all these little curves, many different colors. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that they're not the same level throughout the whole chart, right? There are peaks and there are troughs. Those are your hormones. Those are secreted by your ovaries, which are your female, generating areas for hormones, and eggs for eventually to get pregnant. So those are your hormones, and it changes every single day of the month. So you can see that in any particular part of that cycle, your body is going to react differently to these hormones. Right before your period, there are hormone changes that are not there, when you're not on your period. And so a lot of teenagers during this time will feel hormonal changes. They might have mood swings, and some of them could be pretty intense during this time as their body's adjusting to these changes to the hormone levels. Sometimes these mood swings are just mild and they can kind of just, ride it through, but sometimes it's severe enough where they may not want to go to school or they may lash out at you. And those are not necessarily abnormal. It's not that they're not trying or anything like that. They're just trying to manage these hormonal changes that are in their body. There are medications to help if these hormones are not, meshing well with their body over a course of time where they can't function normally. And there's no shame in that. Come talk to your OBGYN, come talk to your doctors. There are, options to help manage these hormones. And with that said, it's kind of the chicken and the egg. These hormonal changes can cause a lot of stress, but stress, whether it's from school, from home, that can affect the fluctuations in these hormones too. So we are very hormonally sensitive, and any type of stressors to that can change these hormones can kind of affect our emotional state. Puberty is also a time where our self-identity comes around. We start becoming an individual. We might not want to do things with our family anymore. We want to go out with our friends. We want our own time. And not just from a teenager's perspective, but parents have a hard time grasping this time period. I recall when I was a teenager, I went from this, really obedient daughter to someone who kind of didn't want to listen to my parents. I was rebellious. I wanted to go out. I wanted to hang out with my friends. And it was really hard for my parents to understand that. And when I was thinking about this presentation, I was thinking, wow, 8-month-old daughter for me. But flash forward probably 8 years from now, I'm probably going to go through this talk with her too. And I'm going to have to remind myself that she too is going through these changes that is unavoidable. And we just kind of have to be patient and keep an open communication with our teenage daughters. So stress, this is a word that we hear so much in our life, right? So what exactly is stress? It's this feeling of physical or emotional tension. Sometimes it's really hard to describe. You may describe it as I feel angry, nervous about a certain situation, I'm uncomfortable, I'm overwhelmed, that's a big one, frustrated, or I'm worried about something. But stress is your body's reaction to an external or internal challenge or demand. And stress exists in a lot of different places. You know, common causes of stress is whether you really sit down to think about it or not is family. Stress and tension between our parents during this time, not seeing eye to eye on certain things, stress between our siblings if you guys have them, especially if our siblings are very different in ages. Like imagine if you're a teenager and you have like a 5-year-old sibling who wants to play with you all the time, that could also cause stress for you. Social stress, this comes from friends at school. Sometimes because of these physical changes, you might end up switching, friend or social circle, and that can cause a lot of stress for our teenagers. Social media, big aspect, right? Like we're comparing ourselves to what we see on social media. That definitely causes a lot of stress whether we recognize it or not. Some people handle stress very well. Some people, it's just in your chemistry that you get stressed out over certain situations when your friend doesn't. Stress is definitely normal, and it does come with time, with age, and with more and more things that are around us. Definitely looking at my daughter right now, she has no stress. She's happy every day, but as we get a little bit older and we have more responsibility, stress is a crucial component to our everyday life. And with COVID, for the last, year and a half, that is definitely a big cause of stress to not just our teenagers, but to everyone else too. So what can stress do to our body? It changes everything. It does affect our hormones, so our hormones can go nicely, if you recall that graph that we saw, to varying patterns to that, and that can result in a lot of changes, whether it's mood changes, period changes. It can affect our nervous system too, whether we voluntarily want it to or not, which then affects our sleep. Stress can affect our gastrointestinal system. That's a fancy word for our intestine and our stomach. Some people, when you're stressed out, they will have constipation. Some people will have looser stools. All of that is just a response to stress and the hormones that gets secreted when you're stressed out. And lastly, stress does affect our immune system. So when we're stressed out, our immune system drops. It makes it more likely for you to get sick and for other health problems to occur. So, stress is part of our everyday life, and sometimes it's not possible to get rid of stress. It's not to avoid it or to run away from it, but to face it and to learn how to cope and deal with stress in a positive way so that you have a healthy outcome from it. Stress in short bursts is absolutely normal. It is crucial. It helps us deal with everything around us. So, from a evolutionary standpoint, fight or flight, stress will help get us away from dangerous situations. I had to be under a little bit of stress to get this presentation together. So stress can be a good thing, but we have to learn how to manage it, right? And when we become a teenager, that is kind of like the time period where we learn to cope with these stress. We learn skills to kind of get us through stressful times so that it can carry through our adult years. Learning to cope with it with healthy coping habits will definitely make you stronger and more adept at functioning as an adult. So what are some healthy ways to cope with stress? There's so many out there, right? I think the key thing to remember is you have to do what's important for you, what feels right for you. So just because your friend loves to do yoga and helps with stress does not mean that that is the stress relief component for you. So, ways to cope with stress. You can try to sleep. That doesn't work for everybody, right? And especially if you got to go to school or you have a deadline to meet, that can be hard to meet. But on weekends, right, catching up on your sleep, so important. And teenagers do require a lot of sleep. And I hope that parents can kind of recognize that and support them in that aspect, especially if they're not out partying at night. They do need their sleep during the weekends. talking, whether it's with your family members, with a close friend, with a counselor, with your teacher. It is so important to be able to have somebody to talk to about your feelings. Some people do see a therapist or during this time because it's someone who's not going to judge you, who's going to listen to you. And I think the biggest part is listening and rationalizing what you're going through and how you're feeling right now. Exercising is a great way to reduce your stress, but exercising is not for everybody, right? But supposedly exercising is going to help secrete these happy chemicals that will, make you feel better. Picking some type of hobby. So whether it's getting into arts and crafts, dancing, cooking, I don't know, gardening. It sounds more of like an adult thing to do. Like as I get older, I have changes to my hobbies and ways to cope, but just finding something that defines you. This is a very important part of your life. Find something that makes you you. And then relaxation techniques, meditation. I'm sure there's a lot of YouTube videos out there teaching us how to meditate. I don't think you need to spend hours on this, right? 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day. We all have that time, right? Think about how much time we spend on our phones. Gather just a little bit of that to help cope with the stress that you have in your life. So, there's so many changes, physical, mental, emotional, but what can we do to focus on your health as a teenager? One of the big things is that we want to set lifestyle choices early on. We want to make healthy choices a habit and not something that we have to constantly struggle to remember in the future. One of the things that I do, want to remind us is that whether you are a teenager or an adult, no stress eating. It's so easy to grab a bag of chips, to grab some cookies, just because we feel stressed. Having the excuse of, I'm getting my period, I tend to want junk food. I am so guilty of that all the time. My husband knows I'm about to get my period because of the food choices that I make. So, I'm sitting up here telling you about this because it's a very big, important aspect of, being healthy, and we all have to make that conscious effort. So no stress eating, one of the biggest ways to avoid that is to not have these items in your house. I know it's a little bit hard. We go shopping, and I would say half of the grocery store is filled with junk food, and it always looks so appealing, right? But trying to not have these items at home is going to help you not stress eat when you feel stressed. So healthy diet choices, fruits and veggies, those are big, big, big things to do. Find what you like, don't just do it because you have to do it. Find what you like to eat. In a way, social media is great during this time because you can look up healthy, ways to cook if that's something you like to do, and learn to prepare healthy food choices for yourself. Carbs do get a bad rep during this time. People are like, oh, carbohydrates make me gain weight and all of that, but whole grains, which is the brown stuff, those are actually good for you in moderation, right? It's fiber that we need, it's calories that we need, so everything in moderation, we do need it. Dairy to help with vitamin D, we do need protein, and then make sure we drink a lot of water. So avoiding sugary beverages, carbonated beverages with extra sugar during this time, it's really going to help long term with maintaining a healthy body. And most importantly, portions. So given that we live in the United States, our portions are huge. We went to France a couple years ago, and my gosh, their portions are so tiny. They don't even know how to pack up a takeout box or a leftover box because people generally don't have leftovers. But we just have to remember that the portions at our restaurant is way more than what you need in one meal, and to kind of manage that. So a good way, if you want to go eat out with your family or friends, that's great. But maybe portion out the food, save half of it for the next day and don't eat all of it at one sitting. So bone mass is something that we accumulate in our adolescent years, our teenage years, and then eventually it slowly just decreases. So bones are super important because this is now where we develop the matrix to keep our bones healthy and strong. Of course, how dense your bones are, it's a combination of so many different things, right? Your genetics is a very, very big part, but weight-bearing exercises where you are using your body weight is very useful, whether that's running, walking, where you use your body mass, that's going to help develop your bone mass. Of course, calcium, vitamin D, those are also all very important in maintaining good bone health, not just throughout your teenage years, but during your entire lifetime as well. this is not everything you need to be healthy, but iron is also very, very important during our teenage years. So iron is this, I would say, mineral that our red blood cell uses to carry oxygen to our muscles, and we need oxygen to function. If you're iron deficient, you're not going to feel so great, right? We don't have the molecule that carries oxygen throughout our body, and so you're going to feel tired, you're going to feel groggy, you're going to feel sleepy, you're just not going to feel in tip-top condition. One of the common reasons why teenagers can be deficient in iron is that we're just not eating healthily. And also our periods are happening, and sometimes these periods can be heavy, and that does deplete our bodies from iron. We can always supplement from iron, but it's so much easier to get it from our foods. And it's not just red meat, protein that you can get iron from. I mean, a quick Google search and you're going to get so many options for iron-rich plants that we can consume to help keep our irons at a healthy level. So the good versus bad fat. So fat isn't necessarily bad. There are so much good fat out there. And in general, how do you differentiate between a good fat and a bad fat? Is that good fats are generally liquid at room temperature. So think of butter, not so good, right? It's solid usually. So you want to take in more good fats, and this includes nuts, seeds, fish. These are all good for you in moderation, right? It does help our nervous system. It does help us get the calories that we need. And then saturated fats, and usually these are from sources like junk food, not so good. So things you would probably get from DoorDash, probably don't want to do it every day. So just to recap on portion sizes, remember, our calorie needs, our portion sizes that we need do not change. It's been this way since, our mom's generations, our grandma's generations, but our portion sizes at restaurants continue to grow. So, think of McDonald's, like supersize you, like I don't even know how many different supersize options there are, but that's way more than what we need. So learning to portion your food, learning what a serving size is, it's very, very important so that we don't gain the extra weight during our teenage years. Of course, healthy weight gain is very important, but we don't want to gain excessive amounts of the unhealthy ones. Not only does it make us feel bad, it doesn't set us for success in the long run. You can always, choose to look at your plate. Just make sure that fruits and veggies are more than half of your plate. Those generally cause a lot of bulk, helps you feel full, but doesn't pack as many calories as it would if it's filled with other things like, dairy or carbohydrates. And always remember to drink a lot of water. We tend to need more water than we think, and that will also help with sensations of fullness. It will help with digestion and overall keeping our bodies happy and healthy. So exercising, in our teenage years, we do exercise as part of our school, activities with, PE and whatnot, but finding something else, after school on the weekends that you enjoy doing, this will help with keeping your bones happy. It will keep your mood happy. And then it's going to set up habits for lifelong, exercising, and your body eventually will thank you for it. So don't think twice about it. Just find something, do it, try it, and who knows, you might be surprised by what you didn't think you would enjoy just by trying it out. So this next part of the conversation is probably what everybody is kind of interested in learning about, but it is such a huge topic, and I think everybody will come to sexual awareness at a different point in their life. But this is a topic that should not be scary to teenagers, should not be scary to parents. I think the best person to talk about this with their child is, of course, an obstetrician like myself, but parents, right? You don't want your child to get the information from their friend. You want to be the one to talk to them about this, to give them the information that they need, and this should not be a scary subject. Of course, if you're not comfortable talking about it with your child, please bring them to us. We're more than happy to kind of help guide them through this time period. But sex is not just between male and female. This is a time where your child is going to learn about their own sexuality, and they're going to have a lot of questions. They're figuring out who they are. This should not be a taboo subject. And experimentation does happen during this time period, whether or not we We want to believe it whether we like it or not. And so instead of having this big elephant in the room, I do invite you to think about it, to talk about it, find a time. Make this a normal process for your child. Don't make them scared to talk to you about it. Don't make them feel guilty about it. Sexual health is so much more than preventing pregnancies, preventing STDs. This is a time period where we learn that not everything that we see on social media is what's going to reflect in our first sexual encounter and our experience. This is a time where we find out what we like, right? Whether we are into someone of the same sex, someone of a different sex. And it's so important for our children to have someone to confide in and someone to talk to without any judgment during this time. So we see quite a bit of sexually transmitted infection these days, and simply that's just because I feel like it's from social media a lot, because people are having just more and more casual encounters. So one way to prevent sexually transmitted infections is condom use. I know it's not fancy, but please remember to love your body, love yourself, and be responsible about it. Condoms are not just for sexually transmitted infections, but also pregnancy as well. And any type of sexual contact, it does not have to be, penetration. It can also cause sexually transmitted infections. So this is a not so extensive list of STDs, but you can see that there are different ones out there. They are all testable. A lot of them are treatable, but some of them are also lifelong. So we do want you to, be aware of our sexual choices, be an advocate for yourself, always use protection. And when you come see me, even if you trust your partner 100%, it is always good to get tested. And if you're ever unsure, come to talk to your OB/GYN, and we're more than happy to let you know about it. And with that said, I'm going to entertain some questions. Thank you. When is PMS something serious? So PMS stands for premenstrual syndrome, and this happens kind of like around fluctuations between our periods. It generally happens right before our period and can carry through our periods, but then it'll get better. And ultimately, it's kind of our body's response to the difference in hormones prior to getting our period. It is serious when you cannot function your daily life. So some people, they'll feel a little moody. They may not want to talk to their parents. They may not want to talk to their friends. They want to be by themselves, and that's totally fine. But if you're feeling like your mood swings are enough where you don't want to go to school, or you're lashing out, then I think that is serious enough where you might want to have some treatment. And some of the common treatments would be some type of mood medication like an antidepressant or birth control pills. What are some ways to treat menstrual cramps? So common ways to treat menstrual cramps: over-the-counter medication like ibuprofen, the brand name would be Motrin. Aleve is another one, and it's really important to remember during this time you don't want to overdo it. So ibuprofen and Aleve are very, very similar. You want to pick one and stick with it for at least 1 or 2 menstrual cycles to see if it helps or not. Some people take Tylenol or Midol, and that is absolutely fine too. Give one a try for a few months before you say it doesn't work for you. And I think the key to remember during this time is that it's improvement in your pain. It's not elimination of your pain all throughout. So if your pain is at like a 6 out of 10, if a medication gets it to 3 out of 10, I think, it serves its goals. So what is your best advice on cleaning female parts? So this is a very good question. I recommend water. So if you have a removable shower head, great. If not, try to make do with the best as possible. But water is your friend. Definitely wash with water. Get between the folds between your female parts. I'm not a proponent of using soap, but if you are going to use soap, try something that is like low fragrance, no fragrance, hypoallergenic. Some people do use baby soaps because it's more gentle for your skin. If you're not sexually active, do you need a pap smear? Absolutely. So the guidelines right now is we need pap smears starting at 21, whether or not you're sexually active or not. If you're sexually active before 21, please do see an obstetrician, once you become sexually active, but we will not do the pap smear, which is a little scraping of the cervix to check for abnormal cells on your cervix. Will the birth control pill make me gain weight? So this is such a common question that we get. And when they look at the studies, there isn't any significant findings that suggest birth control pills will make you gain weight. That's not to say that there's no correlation or association between birth control pills and weight gain. Remember, birth control pills are hormones. It is going to change the hormones or take over the hormones that are in your system. Some people will do better with it and some people will not as much. It may make your appetite change. So remember, association doesn't mean it caused it, but it may cause some other changes in your body that make you feel like you're gaining weight. And it's very common for birth control pills to make you retain a little bit more water, and that may reflect as a little bit of weight gain. Do condoms protect me from every sexually transmitted infection? As much as I would want to say that it does not. So condoms will protect against things like gonorrhea, chlamydia, but there is one that's called herpes and genital warts. Those are two that condoms are not as apt at protecting against, but that doesn't mean you don't use condoms, right? Any type of skin-to-skin contact on your genitalia can potentially transmit those infections. So, you do have to be very careful with your sexual partners. What should I expect as a teen at my first GYN visit? So at your first GYN visit, depending on your age, we're going to get your sexual history, your entire health history. We learn about medications that you're on, and we do a chat. It does not always involve a physical exam at your first visit. Once we get an idea what's going on, then we might do an exam depending on what's the situation, but it doesn't always entail an exam of your private parts. Depending on your age or your symptoms, we might do a breast exam, and we talk about birth control if that's important to you. We talk about any period changes. We talk about your sexual history, any concerns for STDs where we need to check you. So the first visit isn't as scary as most of us think. Okay? Okay. Yeah. And that concludes our seminar today. And if you have any questions, please do come and see us.